who turn away from futile things. What is futile? Anything which is not going to benefit you in this world or the hereafter, stay away from it. من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعنيه. From the excellence of a person's Islam is that he leaves what does not concern him. Number 3, those who discharge their zakah. So that is not only the zakah, but ulama have included in here those who purify themselves too, meaning those who purify their heart. Number 4, those who protect their private parts. Number 5, those who discharge those things which have been entrusted to them, and they fulfill their oaths and their promises and their covenants. Oaths and promises, you give your word to someone, you should stand by your word. You sign a contract with someone, you should stand by that contract. Not only that, Islam goes deep as this. Imagine you're having a conversation, someone comes to you and he's going to say something. But before he says, he looks around, left and right, make sure no one's there and no one's listening. Without him having to say it, just his body language tells you that he doesn't want anyone else to hear. That becomes an amana. You cannot tell anyone else. Specifically in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned this scenario. And lastly, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى صَلَوَاتِهِمْ يُحَافِظُونَ. Again about salah, those who protect their salah, safeguard their salah, the timings of it, the way it's performed. These 6 characteristics, if you develop, you make an effort, inshallah, you will be successful. Allah Ta'ala says, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْوَارِثُونَ الَّذِينَ يَرِثُونَ الْفِرْدَوْسِ. They are the people who are going to inherit Jannatul Firdaus. May Allah Ta'ala make us amongst them. I'm going to speed through. In Surah Nur, Allah Ta'ala makes mention of a lot of social matters, social etiquettes, from seeking permission before entering a person's house. When a child reaches puberty, then they should knock before they enter anywhere. This is the Quran teaching you explicitly these etiquettes. And this is how even the minutest of detail, the Sharia has already given to us. In this surah, Allah Ta'ala talks about those who commit zina, adultery. Allegations were put against Aisha radiallahu anha for having committed adultery. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed verses to prove her innocence. Now imagine that Aisha radiallahu anha is being accused of adultery. Imagine how Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu would have felt. Then Abu Bakr radiallahu finds out one of the people who are leveling these accusations against Aisha radiallahu anha is Mistah, who Abu Bakr radiallahu anh was actually supporting him financially. So for Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he's supporting someone financially, and that very same person is now accusing his own daughter, the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, of having committed adultery. So he makes an oath saying that, I am not going to support him anymore. So Allah Ta'ala revealed verses, وَلَا يَأْتَلِ أُولُو الْفَضْلِ مِنْكُمْ وَسَعَةِ أَنْ يُؤْتُوا أُولِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ, and so forth. That the high-ranking and wealthy ones among you should not take an oath not to spend on their relatives. But rather Allah Ta'ala says, وَلْيَعْفُوا وَلْيَصْفَحُوا, rather forgive and pardon. أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَن يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. Do you not love that Allah forgives you? If you want Allah to forgive you, you have to forgive too. Look at the level of the crime, the accusation against who as well. Despite that, Allah says, forgive and pardon. He is supporting him financially. So it tells us that anything else trivial that we usually fight over, just ask yourself this same question which Allah asks you, أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَن يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. Do you not love that Allah forgives you? If your answer is yes, forgive everyone, whatever they've done. Whatever they've done. So make this Ramadan one where you let go of all those grudges. Make salam again. Make amends. May Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq. And this is the last point now. Before I mention this, many things are attached to this. So, the first thing that we need to do is have the correct framework in our mind. When we see the world and we see ourselves, we see the many laws and legislations which Allah Ta'ala has prescribed, then how do we see it? We can't see it abstract, in a vacuum. We have to see it within a certain framework. And only when we see it within that framework, then we will understand and we will submit. Otherwise, we will question. The education system isn't programmed in a way where it will make this framework in our mind. So therefore, we need to develop this frame of mind. And that is, at the highest authority is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the all-knowing. He created us. He knows us better than we know ourselves. So therefore, just as a manufacturer who manufactures a device will provide the manual guide and he knows exactly what is going to trigger the faults in this device, Allah knows exactly that of us, of the men and of the women. He knows where we will fault, He knows what is our weakness, and He knows what are the remedies or the measures to be put in place to stop us from faulting. And in this paradigm, when we look at every legislation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we'll understand that if Allah created us and He knows that these are the possible weaknesses within me and these are the possible harms that can come by me, this is why Allah has put this restriction. This is why Allah ta'ala has put this restriction. So from amongst those commands, the first is for the men and the women, lower your gaze. Lower your gaze and protect your private parts. If you don't lower your gaze, you're not going to protect your private parts. They both are linked because each gaze can be an arrow from the arrows of shaitan. Further, addressing the women, Allah Ta'ala says, وَلْيَضْرِبْنَ بِخُمُرِهِنَّ عَلَى جِيُوبِهِنَّ, that they should wear their scarves over their chests and cover. In the other verse which comes in Ahzab, to draw their shawls over their heads and let it drop down, let it hang down, covering the entire body. Yes, in a verse it says, إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا. So people take this verse to mean that you can show your face, you can show your feet and your hands. Whereas Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anh says, no, that refers to the outer garment. Whatever of the outer garment becomes apparent, that's no problem. Everything else should be covered. Another point the ulama mentioned here, it says, إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا, except for that which becomes apparent, not which you expose. There's a difference, isn't it? Something which becomes apparent, it becomes apparent automatically, you didn't intend to. Something which you expose, you're doing it yourself with intention. So when you're working and you're doing other things and your face becomes exposed, your other parts become exposed, there's no problem. There's no sin on you for that. Now, feminists don't like this. Yes, and our sisters are unfortunately affected by this feminist movement. They're not your friends. Go back into history and see where this movement came from. In reality, to be frank, it's for a particular race and a particular type of people. It's not for you. Otherwise, those Palestinian women and sisters and mothers of ours are getting beaten. You don't hear a cry of these feminists. When our women and our mothers and sisters are being raped in Rohingya in India, there's not a cry from amongst them. They're not your friends. Wake up. They have an agenda. And they're fulfilling that. Not for you. For those who believe in Allah, those who ascribe to Islam, you go by what Allah Ta'ala says. And unfortunately, a lot of our sisters are being trapped in this. It will lead to them rejecting verses of the Quran. Lastly, Allah Ta'ala says, وَأَنْكِحُوا الْأَيَامَ مِنْكُمْ وَالصَّالِحِينَ مِنْ عِبَادِكُمْ وَإِمَائِكُمْ إِنْ يَكُونُوا فُقَرَاءَ يُغْنِهِمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. This is an instruction to every parent, every guardian. If you have young men, young women growing up in your homes, they are of age to get married, you must get them married. That is the only remedy and only protection measure to have them safeguarded from zina. Otherwise, you yourself are to blame. You are contributing towards the zina which is happening more and very, very easily. Marriage has become so hard and zina has become so easy to commit. And the common complaint amongst every young man and a young woman is that our parents are not ready to get us married. Why? Because they want a certain amount of finance, they want a house, they want a car, they want everything, and then you're going to get married. By then, they've already gone through 4 or 5 men and women. It's a reality. If you want to wage war against zina, you must make marriage easy. Lower the expectations. Make it easier for the younger generation. If zina can be committed so easily that a person can leave home and by evening they've already committed and come home. You don't have a clue. They can book a hotel, have a nice time between Dhuhr and Asr. I usually say, you don't think nothing is happening, it's daytime, but yes, you have 5 hours in between, you don't know what they're getting up to. It's that easy. Marriage is the only remedy for it. May Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq.